My fiancée humiliated me at her corporate party, calling me her personal handyman, but when I found out she saw me as a temporary placeholder, her own boss sanctioned her, and she lost the promotion she wanted so badly. I'm 30 years old. I'm an electrician. I have my own business, and about 6 months ago, I ended a 4-year relationship in the most humiliating way possible, but also the most liberating, I guess. I still have a hard time processing everything that happened, but I need to get it out because it was basically like having a blindfold ripped off my eyes in the most brutal way imaginable. The thing is that when you're in the middle of something, when you're living that situation day by day, you don't realize all the signs, you know what I mean? It's like your brain filters them out because you don't want to see the obvious, because it hurts too much to admit that the person you love really doesn't respect you. I met Christina like 4.5 years ago at a friend's barbecue, mutual friend kind of thing. She worked in corporate marketing for a mid-sized tech company, you know, the typical office job with cubicles and endless meetings that don't serve any purpose. I had just opened my electrician business at that point. I was like 25 years old and I was super proud of having taken that step after working for other companies for years. My dad was also an electrician. My grandfather too. I mean, it runs in the family. And they always taught me that trades are dignified work, that people are always going to need electricians, plumbers, carpenters, all that stuff. And they were right. The truth is that the business started going well almost immediately, because I'm good at what I do, and I work really hard. At first, with Christina, everything was great, like really great. She seemed impressed with my work. She'd tell me things like how amazing it was that I had my own business so young, that she admired that I worked with my hands, all that stuff. I remember once the outlet in her apartment broke and I went to fix it, and she was there watching me work, and afterwards she told me she thought it was super attractive to watch me do my job. Those first few months were good. We got along well, we had chemistry, and I thought I had finally found someone who understood me and accepted me as I was. But looking back, I think the signs started like a year into us being together. They were small things, subtle, you know? Like comments that in the moment didn't seem like a big deal, but that I now see differently. For example, when we'd go out with her friends from the office, she would always say something like, "Austin has his own business." But she'd say it in a weird way, like with a tone that didn't quite sound proud. Or when they'd ask me what I did and I'd say I was an electrician, she'd rush to add details like, "But he has his own company, he handles all the business side too," as if being an electrician wasn't enough on its own. At the time, I thought she was trying to make me look good, but now I realize she was actually trying to make my job sound more important than she really believed it was. Like 2 years ago, things started to change more noticeably. Christina got a big promotion at her job. She became a manager of something. I don't remember the exact title because it was one of those corporate positions with fancy names that basically don't mean anything concrete. But the point is that she started making more money, she started having more responsibilities, and above all, she started obsessing over networking and how her colleagues and superiors perceived her. Suddenly, everything was about her career, about the conferences she attended, about leadership seminars, about making connections with important people. And that's fine. I mean, I understand that work is important and that she wanted to grow professionally, but the way she started seeing my work changed completely. The comments became more frequent and more hurtful, though she always disguised them as jokes or messing around. When I'd come home dirty after a tough day of work, she'd make comments like, "Oh, the maintenance man arrived," or stuff like that. If I mentioned I had a difficult day because I had to wire an entire house, she'd say things like, "Aw, poor baby. Did you get tired from playing with the wires?" With a super condescending tone. Once I told her excitedly that I'd landed a big contract with a new apartment complex, and she basically ignored it and started talking about a meeting she'd had with a potential client. I'd just stand there thinking, seriously? Don't you care about what I just said? But I swallowed it because I didn't want to cause problems. I proposed to her like a year and a half ago. I bought a ring. Nothing too expensive because I was investing a lot in expanding the business. But it was nice. It was real. She said yes. She cried. She did the whole show on social media with pictures of the ring and messages about how she couldn't wait to marry me. But after that, every time we talked about the wedding, she wanted something super elegant, super expensive, with one of those venues that cost like $50,000 just for the space. I'd tell her we could do something nice but more affordable, that we could use the money for other things like a house or trips, and she'd get upset and say I didn't understand how important the wedding was, that all her friends would be there, people from her work, that we needed to make a good impression. The straw that broke the camel's back was her company Christmas party 6 months ago. She insisted for weeks that I had to go, that it was super important that I be there, that her boss was going to be there, and several important executives, and that she wanted them to meet me. I honestly didn't want to go because those corporate parties bore me to death. Everyone talking about market strategies and synergies and all that garbage that doesn't mean anything in the real world. But I agreed because Christina said it meant a lot to her, so I put on a suit, got myself all fixed up, and we went. From the moment we arrived, I felt something was wrong. Christina started, introducing me to her colleagues, and the way she talked about me was weird. She'd say things like, "This is Austin, my fiancé. He works with his hands," kind of laughing. Or she'd tell her coworkers, "If something ever breaks in your house, you know who to call," pointing at me. I tried to smile and play along, but inside I was dying of embarrassment because it was obvious she was using me as the joke of the night. Things got worse when her boss, a guy named David or Daniel, something like that, started asking me questions about my work. I was explaining to him that I had my own company, that I handled residential and commercial projects, that I just hired 2 apprentices, basically trying to show that I have a real and successful business. And Christina jumped in and said something like, "Yeah, he's like my personal handyman. He always has his tools at hand," laughing like she'd just made the funniest joke in the world. The boss laughed too, like awkwardly, and I just stood there, not knowing what to say because did she seriously just reduce my entire career to being her personal handyman? But the worst part, the absolute worst, was when Christina gave a toast. She got up to make a small speech thanking the team for the year and mentioning some personal things, and suddenly she started talking about me. She said something like, "And I want to thank my fiancé Austin for being here tonight. He's the person you call when your dishwasher breaks or you need a light bulb changed." And the whole room laughed. She continued, "It's not glamorous, but someone has to do it, right?" More laughter. I felt like they were stabbing a knife into my stomach, but I couldn't do anything because we were surrounded by her entire office. I just stood there, smiling like an idiot, while inside, I wanted to disappear. When her speech ended, I went straight to her and told her we needed to talk outside. She was super happy, like pleased because her speech had been a success, and she followed me, outside still laughing. I said, "What the hell was that?" And she looked at me confused like she didn't know what I was talking about. I explained that she had humiliated me in front of her entire office, that she had basically turned me into a joke, that she had reduced my work and my business to being a guy who changes light bulbs, and she, instead of apologizing, got defensive and told me I was overreacting, that she was just being funny, that her boss and her colleagues needed to see her as someone relaxed with a sense of humor. I told her it wasn't funny, that it was degrading and offensive, and that I couldn't believe she thought it was okay to talk about my career like that. And that's when she dropped the truth. She said, "The truth is your job isn't glamorous, Austin. It's not something I can brag about in my circle. People here have master's degrees and MBAs, and you work with wires?" She said it just like that, matter-of-factly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I felt like I'd been punched in the face because, in that moment, I understood that all this time she had been embarrassed of me, that she had never really respected me, that she had always seen me as someone inferior. I took off my engagement ring, which, by the way, I was wearing because I thought it was appropriate for her work party, and I gave it back to her right there. I told her I wasn't going to marry someone who didn't respect me, who didn't value me, who was embarrassed of what I do. She thought I was bluffing. She told me I was being dramatic, that we should go back inside and talk about it later at home like adults, but I had already made my decision. I told her this is over, that the relationship ended the moment she decided to publicly humiliate me to look good in front of her boss. And then she made the biggest mistake of all. She went back into the party and started telling people that I'd had an outburst of insecurity, that I couldn't handle that she made more money than me, that I was a sexist who couldn't stand her success. I heard her from outside talking to her coworkers, basically doing damage control so she wouldn't look bad. I went back inside. I didn't care that her boss was there, that all her colleagues were there, and I said out loud so everyone could hear. It's not that I can't handle your success, Christina. It's that I can't handle your lack of respect. You used me as a joke tonight to impress your boss, and that says more about you than about me. I left from there and left her dealing with the situation. The following weeks were hell. Christina started posting things on social media about how the relationship had ended, basically painting me as an insecure man who couldn't handle being with a successful woman. She'd say things like, "It's sad when men can't celebrate their partner's success," and all her people commenting supportive things without knowing the real story. I didn't post anything because I'm not one of those people who airs their dirty laundry in public, but it hurt to see how she completely changed the narrative. Like 2 weeks later, I got a message from one of the girls who worked with Christina at her office. She told me she had seen what happened at the party and that she wanted me to know that Christina always talked about me in a dismissive way at work. She told me that Christina would tell her coworkers that I was convenient because I could fix things around the house without having to pay anyone, that she basically saw me as a free service. She said that after the party thing, several people in the office had commented that Christina's speech had been in very bad taste and that they thought it was cruel. But what really destroyed me was when Christina's best friend, a girl who I was also close with, called me and asked if we could meet for coffee. I thought she was going to try to convince me to get back with Christina, but instead she told me she needed me to know the truth about what Christina really thought of me. She told me that Christina had always told her that she felt she had settled for me, that I was easy to control, and that suited her while she was trying to establish herself in her career. She said Christina had confessed to her that the plan was to eventually leave me once she was more professionally established and could find someone more on her level. That broke me completely because it meant the last few years of my life had basically been a lie. That while I was planning a future with her, buying a ring, thinking about eventually having kids, she saw me as a temporary placeholder. I took a week off work, which I never do because my business depends on me, and I went alone to the mountains to a cabin that a friend has. I needed to process everything, get away from the noise, understand what had happened to my life. The ironic thing about all this is that later I found out Christina started having problems at work because of the party thing. Apparently, several employees complained to Human Resources about her speech, saying it had been inappropriate and classist. Her boss, the same one who had laughed at the joke that night, told her that her behavior had been unprofessional. There was a rumor that they were going to pass her over for another promotion she was seeking because they considered she didn't have the interpersonal skills necessary for a higher leadership position. Karma, I guess. As for me, the last 6 months have been about rebuilding. I canceled the wedding plans, obviously, and it was a relief not to have to spend all that money on a ridiculous ceremony. I used those savings to buy new equipment for my business and to hire a third apprentice. My company is growing faster than I expected because I've been completely focused on work, and the truth is, it's been therapeutic to be busy. I started teaching night classes at a community college, teaching basic electricity to people who want to learn the trade, and that's made me feel like I'm giving something back to the community. I also reconnected with friends I had stopped seeing as much while I was with Christina. She always had some work event or some dinner with her colleagues, and I'd end up canceling plans with my friends to go with her. Now I hang out with them regularly. I play basketball on weekends. I have barbecues at my house. Basically, I got my social life back. Last week, one of my clients, an older guy who has several rental properties, offered me a massive contract to handle all the electrical maintenance for his buildings. It's the kind of contract that's going to allow me to expand the business significantly, maybe even open a second office in another part of the city. When he gave me the news, he said something that stuck with me. He said he had chosen me not only because I'm good at what I do, but because I treat people with respect no matter who they are. That's rare to find these days. And I thought about Christina and how she never understood that respect goes both ways. That it doesn't matter if you work in an office or with your hands, we all deserve dignity. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely over what happened, because it still hurts to think about the years I invested in that relationship. It still makes me angry when I think about how she used me as a joke that night, how she reduced me to a stereotype to impress people who probably don't even matter to her. But I also feel liberated, you know? because now I know I'm worth more than how she made me feel. My work is honest, it's necessary, and I'm proud of what I do. I don't need someone with a fancy corporate title to tell me my career has value. Yesterday I was installing an electrical panel in a new house, and the owner, a doctor, stood there watching me work and asked me how many years it had taken me to learn everything I know. I told him I'd been in the trade for over 10 years, that my dad taught me since I was a kid, that I went to technical school, that I have certifications, that basically I've dedicated my life to perfecting this work. And he told me he thought that was incredible, that he admired people who mastered a trade because he had no idea how to do that kind of stuff. That comment made me feel more validated than anything Christina ever said to me in 4 years. I guess in the end, the lesson is that you can't build a real relationship on the foundation of one person thinking they're better than the other. It doesn't matter how long you're together. If there's no mutual respect, if there's no genuine admiration for what each person does and for who each person is, it's simply not going to work. And it's okay to end something when you realize the other person never saw you as their equal, even if it hurts, even if it means starting from scratch. Now I'm focused on myself, on my business, on building something solid that's completely mine. A relationship? Maybe eventually, but I'm not in a hurry. This time I'm going to make sure it's with someone who sees my work for what it is. A legitimate and respectable career, not as a joke to make at corporate parties. Because at the end of the day, I know what I'm worth, and I don't need anyone else to confirm it for me.